Hypnosis works, transforming the mind.
Hi there, I'm Hendrik Baird, a practicing non-medical hypnotherapist currently based in Pretoria, South Africa. I'm always curious to learn more about hypnosis, and so I thought, what better way to learn than to chat with other hypnotherapists to gain some insights into what they do and how they work. So join me as we explore the fascinating world of the mind and of hypnosis. My guest today is hypnotherapist Aiden Lottering. Do not adjust your set because it was a rainy day here in Pretoria, so the shushing sound you might hear throughout parts of this podcast is just the rain pouring down in Pretoria. Enjoy the interview. Okay, so I'm chatting with Aiden Lottering. Welcome, Aiden, to this podcast series.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Fantastic, yes. So, where do we start? How did you get started in hypnosis?
Oh, it was an interesting journey. I didn't even know what the hell hypnosis was when I started out. I had a martial arts career. I'm still busy with the Chinese martial arts, and we looked for things to supplement the training.
Okay.
And mental things were one of the things on the list. And then we came across hypnosis. And my instructor said, well, there's this guy that does these courses in Joburg, and let's start with it. So I went to this first self-hypnosis course, and it was phenomenal. I mean, the stuff that surfaced for me personally was like, I thought I dealt with stuff that happened like many moons ago. And when we did the trance work and we did stuff and just touched on it, some emotions and something surfaced, and I was like, wow, there's something to this. Something that I never knew existed. And yeah, ever since then I was hooked. So I went through the courses, different organizations, and for the first couple of years I didn't even practice. Just did the odd thing here and there and did the odd case study. And then I got requests. And I thought, well, I might as well try it. And then I just started building it up from there, up to the practice that I have today.
So you're full-time in practice, or
Yes.
it's a part-time? Oh, full-time,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So tell me a bit about your practice. What is the thing that you see most often?
Well, the biggest one from my side is trauma and depression, funny enough.
Okay, because it's usually smoking.
Yes. Yeah, it's weird. I have very few smokers.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, from the other side, it's trauma and depression and anxiety and even spiritual problems. So it's all of those things. It's not the usual things that people come to hypnosis sessions for. And even the weight loss, very few of my clients are weight loss. So it's actually quite phenomenal. Yeah, I've been dealing a lot with those type of things. And trauma all through the board.
What sort of trauma?
Yes, rape, abuse, narcissistic relationships, accidents, all these types of things. That's very traumatic in people's lives, and that was fascinating to me because it's funny, if you deal with one subject, it seems that subject flourishes in the practice.
Yeah.
So it's got these waves of things. At one stage I was busy with a lot of children, and then it was grown-ups, and now it's settled down into a mixture of both. So it's funny how the practice goes that direction.
So, okay, you're talking about children, and this is interesting for me because I don't like working with small children. I can do teenagers, but the small ones sort of get to me. How is it working with children and hypnosis?
Awesome. Okay, it's such a nice tool, and I've had a lot of guys in our field that says, no, young children, they're afraid of them and they don't want to work with them. And I'm like, but they're in trance state up to the age of 7. They're already there. So from the age of 5, that's usually where I take them from. Age of 5, not younger than that.
But sorry, with the rain coming down here on a tin roof.
Sounds very homely.
Yes, it's a beautiful rainy day here in Pretoria.
Yes. So the children, yes, and I know some people are afraid to work with them, but if you work in their value system and you keep it quite safe, and you play lots of subconscious games with them, more like with the adults, because the children are a bit weird in trance states. You can't see the signs. They pop in and out of trance. They open the eyes. They move. They shift. So you have to be quite on the ball to work with them. But I've seen so many benefits with them. The one case specifically that got me hooked on children is I was working at a school that worked with children with ADHD, Asperger's, and all these labels that they throw out there. So it was remedial school. And what got to me is this school didn't believe in the labels. They just believed in helping the children. I thought that's quite nice. So the owner of the school, the psychologist quit, the counselor quit, and she said, well, would I like to become the kids' counselor? Because I was teaching them physical activities at the time, and she heard about the hypnosis and stuff, and I'm like, of course, let's do it. And it was phenomenal. I learned a lot. I was sort of thrown in the deep end, especially with those kids. It was a nightmare, but I learned quite a lot. And the one incident that I recall clearly is I had a little boy there that his behavior was just terrible. I mean, all the bells and whistles. He didn't want to listen to authority. He rolled his eyes when you talked to him. He actually wanted to stab the one teacher with scissors. He was in terrible shape. And we did the first session. And now, when a person is deep in trance and they fall asleep, they can still hear you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I don't really believe that, but I have to experiment with that. And this kid fell asleep. And I did the session. And we created a little anchor for him in his subconscious, for his behavior, and also for his focus. And I told him, no, well, we're done, and you're going to wake up in the next minute or a minute and a half, and now I wait. And I sat there, and I was like, oh, is this going to work? Did he hear me? And I'm thinking, because I'm very new to this. And then, he woke up. It's phenomenal. And after he woke up, he could remember what his anchor was. It was a little white horse, unicorn horse, that he called Shaman. And Shaman in his subconscious represented focus and stability for him. And because I was teaching them physically as well, so we did physical exercises, I actually was so surprised because we were busy doing a balance exercise. And I think, if I recall correctly, it was his right shoulder that this shaman was on as an anchor. And he was struggling with balance, and he placed his hand on his right shoulder like this, and poof, he stood still. And I'm like, what? That was amazing. But what was the best part of it is another kid was watching him. And he tried the same, but it didn't help him for his balance because he didn't have the trigger. I'm like, oh, and then I knew I was onto something, and there's such a wide scope to work with the kids. So I don't know why people are afraid to work with the children.
It would take a special kind of parent to bring a child to hypnosis, though.
Yes, they do. It's funny enough, I've had all sorts. Yeah, people are more open to it once they understand it. I think if they understand there's nothing magical about it, that child is in his own hypnotic world in any case. If they're young, their fantasy and their imagination can be used to assist them greatly. It's not something that's weird, and they're there already. So, it's a specific type of parent. It's funny, I've had all sorts. I can't say that it's this type or that type. It's when people get desperate, they'll try anything. And I think we need to be one of the first points of call, not the last.
But why is that? Why are we right at the back of the queue when people get desperate?
It's weird. I think they get desperate and then they go to alternative modes and they think, okay, well, everything else has failed them thus far, they've got nothing to lose. And then the fear sort of dissipates because now they've tried everything, didn't work, and now they've got nothing to lose. But in the Afrikaans community, as you may well know, is always this religious problem with hypnosis. It's like, oh yes, but what are you going to make me do? Is somebody going to come in possession? Yes, demons, and they're going to do this. And I'm like, people know. No, it's very natural. And I mean, hypnosis has been vindicated by science over and over again. Okay. And what gets to me is if you have a belief system or a hypothesis, in the academic world, you'll find evidence to sustain that hypothesis. So if you're afraid of hypnosis, you're going to find evidence against it. If you want to explore it and be curious, you're going to find evidence for it. So I think that's quite what happens there.
Yeah, it's really raining cats and dogs outside here on a zinc roof. Not a soundproof studio we're working from. And talking to Aiden about hypnosis with children. So, I mean, I've worked with some children, and as I say, I'm not a fan of it. I'm more confident with teenagers because kids sort of seem to move around a lot under hypnosis. Not like an adult, you get them under, I hate that word, but they're under hypnosis and they just don't move.
Relax, yes.
But a child is quite different.
No, they are, definitely. And that's why you just have to handle it child by child. I've had children that were quite relaxed, but most of them they pop in and out of trance. And you have to deal with that. Because I've actually had some of the movement you incorporate in the session. So if they run around, and have this little kid that played with the ball and he's running around, so I use the ball as the session. So you must just be very creative when it comes to the kids. But it's definitely worth it. I mean, if they learn that they've got an internal world, and funny enough, No matter, from age 5 to 13, even when they become teenagers, those young children, they've got an internal assistant that actually can help them solve a lot of issues. And it fascinates me because they're so young, but they can find that peace once you get to that just right access point. It is phenomenal, actually.
Do you think hypnosis should be taught in schools?
Yes, that'll be awesome. If they can learn those skills in schools, that'll be great.
That would be 90% of our problems solved by the age of 16.
I think so too. That'll be great. If I had this tool when I was younger, I mean, yes, people always thought I was a bit weird. And I always thought, okay. Funny enough, when I started working with those kids, the first thing that got to me is like, these children are like me. I wasn't in a special remedial school. I just, what the hell? But anyway, yeah, so if they teach it in schools, even the basic principles, it will be awesome.
Do you think the training that you got prepared you enough for working with kids?
No, it's actually different with each child, but at least the training I got was this fun. If the foundation is solid in your training, you can expand from there. But I think that's also a big thing with guys when they move into practice, because the foundation is there, but the practical.
Yeah, it's different sitting in class and working with one of your fellow students than to actually have a client with real life problems in front of you.
It's hugely different. My first case study, I will never forget. It was a nightmare. We're going to the weird world now, but I think it's nice for people to understand that. I had a girl, she had a rough life. I mean, she was raped by uncles. She was. This girl was just in turmoil, and me being the, oh yes, I'm going to help people with hypnosis. Yeah, here comes the warrior. Oh man, no, I bow my head in shame. We don't save anybody, we just guide them. But anyway, so I sat there, and I'm busy in a session with this girl, and she kept on saying, no, there's somebody with her there, and I'm like, I check my notes. I'm like, no, I don't really understand what she's talking about. So I went and I'm like, okay, can I talk to this person who's with you? And you know, if grown-ups are in trance state, they're quite relaxed, their eyes are closed. They, like you say, they're not like children, they don't move around. When I said that, this girl sat up straight, opened her eyes and looked me in the eye and said, yes, what do you want? And I'm like, whoopsie.
Who is this?
I got goosebumps. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing now? And there I just... something else took over, and I was just discussing this with her, and it was sort of like another part of her being or an entity, because there's these different factions, beliefs, that you've got your multiple personality disorder, then you've got your possessions, but this was something weird. And it was like this part of her that wanted to destroy her whole life. Drugs, sex, everything. And that was so weird because I wasn't prepared for this, but I think I had angels or something guiding me, because I was just like, wow, that session actually went well. And then after about 2 or 3 sessions, that part of her was equilibrated, and that part said, it'll leave. And I'm like, where the hell is it going? It'll leave, but okay, where to? What are you? So it was very weird for me, that first experience. But then it opened me up to more sessions, and I wasn't afraid after that. It was like, okay, well, now I'm a bit more comfortable. So I was literally thrown into the deep end my first session.
So when we do parts therapy, that's what you talk about.
Yes.
You know, we have these different aspects to our personality, these different parts of us. Was that kind of what we were dealing with?
Yes, but I've done the parts a lot, but this was weird. This was not the same, because even in parts therapies, the guys still stay relaxed and they can access those parts. They don't open up their eyes, sit up straight and look you in the tone of voice and say, well, I'm like, oops. So that was a bit strange for me. So
in fact, you did the opposite of what people expect. People expect to be possessed by demons, but you actually got rid of one.
Yes, yes, if you can say it that way. And then after that, I've had similar experience with new clients, but then I knew how to handle it, because if you just fear it and if you just don't understand it and you get freaked out by stuff like that, then it's difficult. But now it's run in the park. It's like, okay, I'm willing to deal with this.
So hypnosis is a really excellent modality to solve problems very quickly.
Yes.
How many sessions do you usually spend with a client to help them to overcome their issues?
2 to 3.
Yeah?
Yeah, 2 to 3 sessions, especially with the trauma and depression, anxiety and stuff like that. Sometimes even just one, the first session, because most people don't even touch that part of themselves, that relaxed part, that, I don't know how to explain that part, because even in the hypnosis world they don't know what happens there, but there's a part that surfaces from them. And that's not even parts therapy, that's even beyond the parts. There's a part that exists in that space, and they touch themselves there and they feel what it feels like, and that's a part of them that they actually get in contact with. And I don't think a lot of people do that. And even just that, when they get into that relaxed state, changes their perception. And once that mind is stretched, it can't go back to those original dimensions. So it's actually quite cool.
I have a lot of people say after the first session, I don't think I've ever relaxed that deeply in my whole life.
Yes.
And like you say, that's a very special place to be.
Yes.
And a very healing space.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so amazing to witness the facial expressions afterwards, before and after. We should actually start taking before and after pictures of the face because it's a huge difference. And then, people are more open to it then.
What sort of processes do you use? I mean, there's regression, parts therapy, direct suggestion, metaphors. Which one is your favorite, or does it depend on the client?
It depends on the client. And also I explain to the people that there are different schools of thoughts when it comes to subconscious. Some people say you have to regress, and some people say no, regression is not important. You can just reprogram the subconscious going forwards. And I say, yeah, but it depends on the individual, and it just, for now, I see where the subconscious takes us. Because I've learned not to force the subconscious and don't actually expect anything from the client. Just go with the flow. Sometimes I don't even want to know why a person comes and sees me. And that's amazing, because then I'm like, okay, lottery. It's like, but it hones the skills, because then if you sit with your client and you just do the work and you're going to translate and you ask the subconscious and communicate with it, it leads you down that path very quickly, and then you can actually pinpoint the problems. I think that's what makes it so effective, more than any other modality, because which modality does that? It's just talk, and this is where you actually get to a point and something can actually work and something can actually be solved. So yes, I have a way. It's actually quite an interesting approach, because it's a mixture of a lot of different stuff. I don't go with this client, I'm going to regress. The subconscious leads me there. So I think the important thing is how you state the questions on the trance work, and that's important. So the questions that you give the subconscious, you have to be like a very good investigator.
It's like a detective.
Yes, exactly.
In a way.
A very good detective. Because sometimes you miss the little nuances and the words and the gestures, and you're like, oopsie, I missed something there. But then it comes out. I actually had a little girl, she was 8, or she is 8. She didn't want to talk to me at all. And she was sitting there with her arms folded and legs crossed and looking the other way. And then I went, okay, so you don't have to see me, but you can hear me. And you think, she's pulling her face. She goes, I'm like, and because you can hear me, I can say a few things, and I know your body's going to react to the things that you don't like that I'm going to say. So I went on a whole spiel, and I spoke to her, and I just had a session on body language. And she just led me with her body language and her facial expressions, and that was such an interesting one for me, because she can talk, and she's quite clever, but she just refused to because she thought she was in trouble. Mom forced her to come.
Of course.
And it was amazing. So there's these little things that you have to pick up. The nuances, the body language, the words that you use, tone of voice, all these things that hypnosis uses. And it's so nice just to experiment with that. And have the difficult clients.
Talk to me about if a client comes to see you for the first time.
Yes.
What would your session, how would it look like? How would it work?
My first session, I usually, the anchors in the subconscious. I work a lot with the anchors, but the anchors that's designed in their own frame of reference. So I don't give suggestions for anchors. I try and see how the subconscious puts their own anchor together. Say, for instance, there was a huge traumatic experience, and we equilibrate the traumatic experience with certain techniques. And if that equilibrated sense is there, we anchor that into an anchor. And it's funny because the subconscious, the same word, like trauma is the same word cognitively, but on the subconscious level, the representation of that word is quite unique to each and every person. It is weird for me because trauma, we all think trauma is trauma. Okay, what type of trauma? I mean, it doesn't matter. From children to adults, that trauma is a unique perspective in the subconscious mind. So we work surrounding that anchor. And sometimes I don't even do, I do more like the Ericksonian talk therapy combined with the neuro-linguistic programming when I have difficult clients. So it depends on the client in the first session, but that's the first session's goal, is to create the little anchor in subconscious, have that person understand what that anchor is for and how it can assist them in the steps to come in the next few sessions, if any. So that for me is a big thing, because I found that worked really well.
Do you have people that come to you and go like, I don't think you can hypnotize me?
Oh, absolutely. I love those. Okay. Because, yes. And it's so funny because people think hypnosis is like this awkward state, and but we all go through it. If you fall asleep, you're going through hypnotic state. If you wake up, you go through hypnotic state. It is there. If you don't sleep, maybe you're not going through hypnotic state. But if you daydream, it's funny to me. If they don't understand the science behind it, or just what we refer to when we refer to as hypnosis. So yes, I've had those. And the best one is like, oh, I didn't even feel hypnotized. I'm like, what the hell does it feel like? Nobody can even explain it correctly because everybody's experience is so unique. Yeah. And the best thing to describe it is relaxed. And yes, those ones that come out and say, oh, I wasn't even hypnotized. There's a nice trick that one of my teachers, well, you know him as well, taught. And he said, no, he likes to use the word introspection when it comes to hypnosis. Because all the things you've discussed now is not around you, it was inside you. So that's part of the trance work. It's introspection. The guys go, oh, that makes sense. So yes, you get those people. And but it's okay, because if you understand the quality of the questions that you need to ask the person to get to a certain point, they can actually also experience trance, even if it's for a short state. In fact, with those guys, I do short trance states. I don't go for the deep trance state. I don't go for anything like that. It's just in and out of trance. So they can go into trance state like 4 or 5 times in one session.
Okay.
And just do work there and come back out.
Yeah.
And that's quite nice, because that breaks down the resistance for next sessions, and they understand it's quite safe.
Talk to me about highly analytical people who sit and analyze everything you say. I had a client once, and we ended the session, says, no, everything you said I could understand because I could work it out for myself and I know exactly what you were trying to do.
Yes. And those analytical people, you just say, okay, what was it that was exactly what I was trying to do? And they give you the answer, and you ask the questions until they get to a point where they don't have the answers. Okay, because if the subconscious, it's funny for me, because the subconscious has weirder answers than the cognitive ability. So we can go with our logical mind and have all these explanations of questions, analyze, but you get to a point where the questions exhaust themselves. Okay, and this is actually what neuro-linguistic programming does very well, because they've got certain types of questions that they ask. And those questions get you to a point where it fizzles out, and you're like, now what? Now the analytical mind can't even grasp that question anymore, and that's where you try and slip in nice suggestions and just get those people in there. But yeah, the analytical guys are difficult because they love to analyze. Okay, but they also, I think they gain more from a session if they can break that barrier than the person that just goes into normal deep trance. Because once an analytical person touches that part, that is actually quite, I want to say, sacred. Best word I can use to describe it. They never go back. It's like you see wow, then their minds have been changed. And we're in the business of mind changing.
So do you think being analytical is kind of a protection mechanism so that I don't go to that deep holy place within me?
Yes. Because we are, wherever we look, there's fear. Look at the situation we're in now. Masks, sanitizers, all these things. COVID, fear. Now, how do you assess a fearful situation? You have to analyze it. So the analytical mind is in the forefront with most of us. Because what the hell? Your brain is a survival-making mechanism. Now you want to survive. Now you have to analyze. You can't survive otherwise. You have to analyze the fear, the threat, and keep in that state the whole time. And then it's weird. And for those people, there's a nice exercise. I did it the other day to myself, because if we work with the mind, your mind also goes a bit nuts. And you have to brace yourself, and you have to pace yourself, because once we work with the mind, that mind can take you on a journey, and you can, no, I don't want to go there anymore. It's like, stop. So I had this little vision of what was the first being like on this planet? What was the first human like? Did they have fears? Did they have what did they have? It was all these things. And then I asked myself the question, who am I before I was born, and who am I after I will die? And then the mind goes into a funny state. It's like, then analytical mind goes, wait, what am I? What did you ask? Yeah. It's like, what did you just say? And it's in that space that there's this sense. You cannot analyze the sense. And I think people have been trying for millennia to explain that state, that whatever that is, it's like being God, being it Tao, being it your sacred self, your higher self. There is that part of you that exists beyond all these senses. And it's funny, in hypnosis, when you ask people, okay, in this state, can it be taken away from you? They immediately say no. They say, is it something you have to earn? They say no. They say, it's something that will leave you ever? No. Even after death? No. And it's like, wow, people get to that state. There's a part of them that has that state. But if we have fear-based mentality, that state can never be achieved, unfortunately, because then we just latch onto fear, and then we have to analyze the whole time.
Sure. Tell me, you touched on something, it's self-care.
Yes.
Do you go for hypnosis yourself?
Yes. Well, Yeah, I go see some of my teachers.
Yes.
Because we know what it is, they become quite clever because now they ask questions like I do. Because if you go for hypnosis yourself, you know what's coming. It's like, okay, well, let's just have this process. So yes, I do see other people, and I do actually, because I learn a lot. Because it was a modality that meant so much for me, I actually want to learn more. But then again, the mind can work against you because you know exactly what the person who's doing the hypnotizing is going to do to you. So you say, whatever.
That's not the right technique that you taught us.
Yeah, where does this come from, huh? That word you used. And it's funny how that becomes analytical mind.
Yes.
And then we're like, what now? So definitely. And I think everybody that's involved with hypnosis will eventually move to a higher level, and they'll become intrigued with meditation and just being and just that sense of who we are. So I think all guys that practice will get to that level, and then that state is quite cool, because if you do meditation and stuff like that in that state, then it actually transcends hypnosis, if I can explain it that way.
What is the difference between hypnosis and meditation?
Hypnosis for me is that subconscious mind is still in a realm, it's still in a construct. Okay, because our subconscious mind is quite free, but there's still a construct to it. There's still rules and regulations, and there's still things that you have to navigate and play. Where meditation, I think you break through past those constructs to, like I said, that word, the higher self, whatever you're connected to, this thing that is this underlying essence of us all. So I think that's the major difference for me between hypnosis and meditation, because I've had meditative states where I knew it wasn't hypnosis and I couldn't describe it. And I was like, what is this? Because I've experienced trance, I've seen people in trance, but this is beyond trance. It's not hypnosis. It's like, oh, that's curious. It's a curiosity for me, because that state I don't think anybody can explain. With hypnosis you can explain subconscious, and you can tell people more or less, they can take notes what it was like, but that experience is voiceless. You can't even, with these vibrations of our vocal cords, it's very difficult to explain it. And I think that's the major difference for me.
Tell me about an interesting client, something unusual that you've had in your chair.
A little boy that had a fear of wind. Wind, yeah, just wind blowing. It's like, I've never heard of that phobia before. He's afraid of the wind.
That is a new one for me too. Yes.
Yeah, it was so weird. And after 2 sessions, he started sleeping with the windows open. So I'm like, wow, that's so cool. But that was weird for me, because I've never had somebody that's afraid of wind. And it's a thing, because if the wind gets strong, anything can happen. And this little boy was quite afraid of that. And that to me was interesting.
Wow.
And then you get the controversial subject of past life regression.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you think that is, and how does that work?
The past life regression thing is actually phenomenal, because also I had sometimes kids spontaneously regress, and now I'm like, but where the hell are we now? Because this wasn't part of the session. What are we doing now? You have to keep track. And the weirdest one for me was, now, whether past life regression is real or not, it has an effect. Anybody who's done a session, anybody who's seen a session, who's done a proper session, it does have an effect. It brings a certain kind of peace for those people, myself included, when I've experienced it. So, yeah, the people say they're for or against, is it real, is it imagination? That, in my realm, I don't even care about that. It does have an effect whether it's imagined or real. But anyway, so this little boy regressed, and he was standing next to Jesus' tomb. And I'm like, what? Now I'm curious, because I'm Afrikaans, and I've grown up as a Christian, which is now I'm not into religion anymore, but now I'm very curious, and I'm like, but this is not my session. I cannot interrogate this little boy. And he had this great epiphany. He was one of Jesus' disciples, and he stood there, and as Jesus ascended, he realized that today's people, the message that Jesus had surrounding love, they misinterpreted it completely. And that wasn't the message he was trying to leave behind. And I'm like, but what was the message? Explain. And I can't, because you cannot interfere with your client's journey. Yeah. And I'm like, well, okay. So that was quite unique for me, because I was like amazed. And I was like, oh, I should have asked more questions. But it was his journey, so I could just ask the questions that was relevant to him and what he wanted to take out of that experience. And I think a lot of the time that's what people think with hypnosis, is we want to modify their experiences. We just want to actually enhance it. If that makes sense. Just want to enhance the experience and open up that side of themselves, so they can make decisions and empower themselves in their own lives. Yeah, that was an interesting client. And as I said, my first one was totally deep
Mind-blowing.
mind-blowing, yeah. It was definitely mind-blowing. It's like, what the hell is all these things and who is this? And then, I had one that actually gave me a huge fright. One of my clients, this was many years ago, but she actually spoke to me, and then I had her for a session, and then fiance at the time phoned me, and this person is sitting on the roof of our flats, the block of flats we are, she's ready to jump. And I'm like, oops. And she doesn't want to talk to anybody. I'm the last hope. And I'm like, holy moly, the responsibility. Are you nuts? So I'm like, okay, well, give her the phone. And she just, she didn't even talk. It was like this. And I can't remember how long the time was, Hendrik, but it felt like an eternity, okay, to try and get this girl, just with talking to her, just suggestion, just convincing her it's not going to be that bad, and just trying to get the idea of why she wants to kill herself at this moment. And I think it was about, if I recall correctly, it felt like freaking hours, but I think it was an hour and a half I was on the phone. And she gave a sigh. And that sigh was like, oh, okay. That was a good sign for me. It's like when people go, okay, something's happening. And she actually came off the roof, and then we had sessions, and I think today she's a pastoral counselor. So that was scary, because I didn't get any feedback, and I was just talking, and I had to go and sort of translate myself and be guided just to what to say, because that was scary. And I was like, for me, one weird session. I mean, over the phone, can't see the person. There's only and you're like,
oh my goodness. Do you find, talking about going into trance states, that when you're with a client in a session that you also go into trance?
Sometimes, yes. But I've lost my train of thought when I do that. So I've sat with a client and I'm like, oopsie, where was I? we were going on to something phenomenal, and I was like, oh, no. And because it's actually such an enjoyable state sometimes, that when you go into the trance, I go into the trance state. I've had that when I lose clients. So the depth varies. I will go, but not that deep. It's funny. People say, what does it mean to go deep? But if you meditate a lot, and if you do things, you understand what they mean by going deep. There's a part of you that you access that's deep. It's the only word I can use to describe. I know what people say when they went deep.
They went deep inside themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that doesn't make sense to the logical mind, because where the hell do we go? The bowels. How much deeper can we go? Where are we going? So yes, I understand what they mean by that. And that's quite unique.
Also, do you get influenced by the suggestions you make? Do you sort of take those suggestions for yourself as well, or is it just something you direct at the client?
Any person that's in a healing modality, whether it's psychologist, whether it's Reiki master, whether it's this is my opinion, okay, but from my experience, any person that's in that modality has something that they want to work on within themselves, within themselves. I mean, and for me, that was hypnosis. I found so much relief from it, and I still, when I work with clients, something happens to me as well. It's like a giving and a receiving. It's not just you're there for the client, all high and mighty. Something changes in my personal mindset and my awareness, and everything changes for me as well. So yes, definitely. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street.
Well, I must say, I've seen so many smokers. I will never, ever smoke again in my whole life.
There you go.
Those suggestions are so deep.
You see, so deep, they're stuck there. Yeah, so you see, with you and the smokers, that's where you go. I never smoke again in my life. Why? I see clients. So definitely has an effect on the practitioner as well.
So, do you ever see people for sport?
Yes, actually.
Yeah?
Yes. I have golf, boxing, martial arts. That's the only sports. What was the weird sport? No. People say that, if you can get hypnotized, you're weak-minded. Sports people, highly paid professionals who are dedicated, disciplined, and focused, use visualization techniques. Where's the weakness? That to me is like weird.
It's like strength, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. It's a huge strength. And I'm like, what the hell? It's not weak-minded, because these guys are actually nice. And the sports people are actually nice to work with, because they're dedicated and focused already. They actually want it. So, and they have to know how to incorporate mind power into what they're busy doing. So yeah, they're actually quite nice to work with.
I had a poker player once who wanted to improve his poker, and it seemed
Oh,
to
wow.
work well for him. I had to go read books about poker because I didn't know anything about it.
That's the other thing. They come with you with a weird suggestion like, what is that? And then you have to gain the knowledge, otherwise you can't help them very much. Yeah.
Do you talk to clients about what is hypnosis? For instance, in your first session, do you explain to them what it is and the process that they're embarking on?
I ask if they have any questions surrounding it that they don't understand, because with these days Google and stuff, they can just search and they'll find if they're that curious. So I just ask, is there anything that they're uncertain about and that they feel uncomfortable with that I need to explain more? And usually that opens up a few questions that they couldn't find on Google.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't explain to them the whole process because, yeah, in today's society I don't think it's necessary. If they really want the information, they'll go get it. And if they come sit down, but that doesn't, it's funny, they come prepared but they're still nervous. The first session, people are so nervous. It's like weird. It's like they're sitting there and like, what are you going to do to me? I'm like, nothing. Nothing. You're going to do this all to yourself. And they're like, what?
What?
Yeah. And it's funny because if you can actually teach a person how to hypnotize themselves, it's a great tool. Then afterwards they're like comfortable with it. They understand. They're in control of the process. Not the hypnotist or the hypnosis practitioner.
We were talking earlier about COVID and how people are more anxious and, you know, all the effects that COVID has had. Has COVID had an effect on your practice?
Oh, absolutely.
And the way that you practice?
Yes, absolutely. We had to move to online sessions. Yeah.
How does that work?
What a new environment. I had a whole session with a woman's nose. Because she was, the camera, the phones, when you move around, and she was busy with trance work, so her phone fell over. And I could just see up her nose, and I'm like, whoopsie. Now I can't stop, because we're busy. And so I had like a 20-minute session with her nose, which was quite interesting. So it changes the dynamic a bit. And the thing with, our country, load shedding, lagging of internet, those things have an effect. And so the online sessions I approach a bit differently. I use a lot more questioning, a lot more things not related to trance, and then again, like I do with some clients, I have short trance states and then come out of it, and then we build around that, and short trance state, go out of it, build around that. I don't have a deep trance session online, but still effective, and people still gain the benefit from online sessions. It just takes a little bit of getting used to, because remember, we're not used to talking to people and seeing our own faces. Now on the camera and on the computer, you're talking to a person and you're seeing your own face.
Oh, good.
And now it's like, whoopsie, the mind has to work its way around that as well. So
because I always wondered what would happen if you're busy with a client, they're in trance, and the line cuts out, and there they go.
yes, they won't get stuck there. Thank heavens, we know that for a fact. They will come out. It's like there's an old movie called Office Space. I don't know if you've seen Office Space, but that happens to this guy in the movie. He's busy with a hypnotherapist, and the hypnotherapist has a heart attack while the other guy's in trance. So he stays in this trance state, and the movie plays on from there. It's actually quite funny. Not realistic, but funny. So yes, if it cuts out, I've actually had that, and then we just log on back on, and you can actually pick it up very quickly again.
Okay.
Yes, so the person doesn't stay there because they're aware something is off.
I mean, many people are scared they're going to be stuck in hypnosis. One of the most often asked questions I get.
Yes, when you come out of it, yes, you will.
You might fall asleep a little while and then come out of it.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to stay there. I wish, imagine you could stay there. Bye-bye world, I'm staying in trance state. Unfortunately, that's not realistic.
Do you get to deal with hypno junkies, people who come to you often just because they want to get hypnotized all the time?
Yes. I've had a couple of clients, and they go just after the 9th session. I'm like, but we've done what we needed to. Why are you coming? No, they just enjoy it. I'm like, oh, well, if you want to pay me for the enjoyment of it, by all means. If you don't want to do it yourself, I'll take your money, but we've worked on it. So I'm completely open and honest with them, and they seem to appreciate that because they just want to go and they just want to have hypnosis as a tool. But lately I've been giving them homework. So you can come and see me again if this is done. And they're like, oh. I'm like, okay. But once this is done, we can... Because the idea of hypnosis is not to make the hypnosis practitioner or any practitioner a crutch. And they make you a crutch if they become hypno junkies and they just want to come by the whole time for hypnosis, like almost like a drug. That's not the idea. Well, for me personally, that's not the idea of hypnosis. It's a different journey. So yeah, I've had people look at me very disappointed. They're like, I can't come again. No, not until you've done this. It's just how it is.
Why should people come to you for hypnosis?
To me personally, I think mainly because of the approach is different than just hypnosis. I think that's also why I had the trauma clients, the depressed clients, the anxious clients, the clients that struggle with their own demons way more than the other stuff. Because it helped me a lot with that, and so I understand that. So the energy I send out is I can understand with people in their deepest, darkest holes, and I can sit with them and I can actually play there without judging. And I think that's quite a nice thing for people to hear and to feel. Now that you mentioned, interesting question. I've never asked that question myself, but I would say that would be it. Yeah, that would be that talk, because I had to, you know, with that song of Peter Gabriel's where he goes digging in the dirt. You're digging in the dirt. Stay with me. I need support. Yes, I've had to dig in my own dirt as well. I think a lot of us do if we go into modality like this. Otherwise, you can't even begin to assist other people and sit with them in that space. And I think that for me is what's nice. I can sit with people in that space and just work with it. And we bring humor to that situation, because we all need humor, otherwise we're going to die. So it's funny. People say, it's such a serious matter. How could you laugh at people? I'm like, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing with them. Because the session is not analytical and strict and this, I almost want to use the word anal, sorry, but it's not that type of session. It's relaxed. It is like we meet there in person. I go show you what I've experienced and how to get there, and then you do with it what you wish. So yeah.
And then if people want to come and sit with you, where do they get hold of you? How do they do that?
My practice is based in Pretoria at the moment, in the northern part of Pretoria, actually on the Modality Road, out close to Ridderplaat Dam. So yeah, it's quite out there on the, almost like this setting, like the agricultural holdings where we're having this interview now. So they can get hold of me there, and my website they can see, and then the online sessions also get booked on the website. And the website is childrenoflife.co.za. And funny, that name, everybody's like, Children of Life, sounds like a cult. And I had a few courses and workshops where they put up the name, and I thought these people have a point, because I see Children of Life with an arrow that way, and I'm like, yeah, it does sound a bit cultish, Children of Life. And I'm like, but the name behind that is Khalil Gibran. I don't know if you've ever read his work, but he has a thing on children. And he said, your children are not your children. Okay, and I'm like, but what the hell does that mean? And I went around there and I'm like, yeah, the best we can describe is we're all children of life. So that's why I chose that name. So I can see it's a bit cultish, but that's Children of Life. It makes sense for me.
I'll be putting all of Aiden's contact details in the description of this podcast as well as in the comment sections, so you can easily get hold of him. To end off,
yes.
What makes hypnosis special?
What makes hypnosis special? I think what would make hypnosis special is that it's a modality and where you're in a judgment-free zone and there's no medical equipment and medical procedures involved. It's just purely you and your own mind, and the expansion, the power of your own mind, the capabilities that have or you can achieve through hypnosis. That's what makes it special to me. And if you have somebody that approaches realistically, because I've seen how people use hypnosis and you can be all is like the miracle cure, which is not, okay? But if you can understand how that works and incorporate in your daily life and your actions and your goals, and whether it's healing, whether it's stopping addictions, whether it's experiencing a better spiritual state, a better path for yourself, I think that's what makes hypnosis special. It's like the secret sauce in a burger. It's a good way to explain it. That secret sauce is what makes it. It's not the burger necessarily, but it's got your secret sauce. And that's what makes it special for me.
Aiden, thanks so much for chatting with me.
No, thank you for the invite.
Well, I found chatting to my hypnosis colleague very interesting and insightful, and I trust that you did too. Their contact details are in the podcast description, or you can get in touch with them through findahypnotist.co.za. If you want to find out more about me and what I do, please visit my website, hendrikbaird.com. Remember, I release new episodes every Thursday, so be sure to subscribe to my channel. Until we speak again, have a hypnotic day.
Hypnosis works. Transforming the mind.